It was at this moment I knew I fucked up. Hey guys, I'm Heintje, and back in 2023 I went to Bikepark Ferme Libert in Malmedy. I had a great day and made this video about it. A video that performed very well. It almost made me enough money to buy myself a rear shock for my hardtail. But more important, I booked a lot of progression that day. However, this park still has a lot of features that I feel I can do but haven't done yet. So I had all the reasons to get back there, which I did, multiple times. Unfortunately, none of these days went as planned. Let me tell you all about it. My first visit was a couple of months later, after I visited a number of bike parks in the Harz and also spent the whole week in Port de Soleil. For sure, at this point in the season my confidence was at an all-time high. If that alone wasn't enough to check some new features off my to-do list, I even brought a friend who is clearly a better rider. Hopefully he can help me with a tow-in or some advice. Of course, as always, the first few runs of the day were to warm up and get into the flow. Even though I've ridden so much bike park in 2023, it always takes me quite some time to get going in this park. First of all, the surface is rough, really rough, even on a downhill bike. Second, the speeds here are high and the jumps are big, all things that take some time to get used to. On the jump trails, all you have to do is hold onto your bike, pull up for a couple of jumps and absorb some impacts. Fun, but not the best way to warm up. For that I prefer the tighter forest trails. I have to ride so much more active on these trails. Unfortunately, these were still pretty wet, but brought me to the first sketchy moment of the day. In order to try to keep my feet dry, I manualed through the puddle underneath the lift pad. While manualing through a huge compression into a jump was not the safest idea. Luckily everything ended fine. With this trail so wet, it was not ideal to warm up on. I mean, sliding left and right might be fun, but only if you're able to react to the sliding. And yeah, for that you'll need to be warm and in full focus. So we opted for a few more runs on the easy jump trails. After a couple of runs, it was time to move on to the forest side. This side has multiple trails that are quite easy to get lost on. Also, the top section is pretty steep, and depending on what trail you pick, you might come across a couple of big features. First one is the step down, one of the features I know I can do but haven't done yet. My friend going for it straight away, making it look like nothing. To end up at the road gap, a feature we both haven't done.
Road gap.
Next up is a tiny drop, at least if you want it to be tiny. On the other hand, if you want to go big on this one, you can. If you take it straight on, you can land anywhere from here to here. However, the next level option is to jump to the left. In this case, you have to stay clear of this tree stump. Benefit of this line is that the exit is smoother and gives you a slightly better line into the next section.
Oh ja, als je hem daar ongeveer landt, zit je al goed.
Back to the top. Time to start what turned out to be the last run of the day. Yes, barely warmed up, so this one did not go as planned. First, a mechanical issue. In this spot, I all of a sudden lost all the air in my back tire due to a cut in the sidewall. Unfortunate, but not a day ender. I believe it took me 2 plugs, but I was able to patch up my tire. With some fresh air in my tire, it was time to continue the trail. And what better way to do so than to hit the step down? What can go wrong, right?
Ik denk het wel. We kunnen vanaf hier nog halen?
Ik zou echt niet bijtrappen vanaf hier.
Oké.
Het is gewoon rollen, misschien een beetje die heuvel daar pompen. En dan haal je hem gewoon.
Oké, dus gewoon lekker laten vallen.
Hij is echt veel.
After some last tips, it was time to follow Jens. Just as I expected, easy. Now let's have another look at the road gap. There's so much that makes this jump so sketchy, more on that later in the video. For now, the sniper landing was enough for both of us to not even consider going for it. In most cases, as the jumps get bigger, the landings get longer as well, giving you a bit of leeway. Well, not here. Here you barely have a bike length to land. Now for the tiny drop that's coming up. Jens wanted to go for the left option I mentioned earlier. Let's watch that one again in case you missed it. He was a fraction too late with pushing on the handlebars to get airborne. Instead, he pushed his front wheel down, resulting in a nasty OTB, landing about 4 meters lower. In hindsight, this crash wasn't as bad as it looked or could have been. He fell pretty hard on his shoulder and of course, as with most mountain bike crashes, he also hit his head, resulting in a small concussion. An abrupt and unexpected ending of a promising day, but hey, we're all aware of the risk of mountain biking and note that things like this can happen. Like I said, this could have been so much worse. No broken bones or anything else serious. After a couple of weeks of taking it easy, he was back on the bike again. This unfortunate event left me still with the urge to send some new jumps at Ferme Libert. However, it took me over a year before I got back to this park. While I warm up, once again, let me talk about the mindset for this day. This day was 1 week before a trip to Ferme Libert. I don't like to take it slow just because of future consequences. I work as a self-employed freelancer. If I have a big crash, I know I can't work for some time, having no income. This could be a reason to be very careful, but that's not how I work. Worrying too much about the future makes you forget to enjoy the moment. Only with a vacation on the agenda, it's a bit different. That's a bit more on my mind. So this day I took it very slowly. I think I did more than 10 runs of the main jump line. I've done countless times by now. At one point I did check out a bigger jump, only I just can't seem to get a good line through these corners, not carrying enough speed for this jump. Now I think I still can get enough speed for the big jump, however at this point I didn't want to risk it, so I bailed. For sure a jump I can do. All I have to do is get up to speed and then don't touch the brakes. Ah well, maybe some other time. This day we moved on to the forest side of the park to mix things up. After trying to find my way between all the mud, I realized too late I was already at the boner log. Knowing this one was easy, I walked back up and just nailed it. Now this one leads to the sketchy road gap. At this point I was completely open-minded about it. I know it's a scary jump, but I also know I have the skills to clear it. So I did what I always do, check out everything about this jump, trying to get a feeling for the speed needed. Then I did a run up to see how that feels. Even though I had to start slowing down, I felt I would have the speed. I walked back up, being 80% sure I would go for it. One of the things that make this jump tricky is the very rough run up. If I would have slid on one of the routes, I would have aborted my attempt. This didn't happen, so I committed. At this point, I felt my speed was on the low end. Here I could hit the brakes and abort, or put in a couple of cranks and go for it. The difference between real life and video is, in real life you can't pause, so I had to make that decision instantly. In hindsight, I chose wrong. All I could do is pull up as hard as possible, hoping it would be enough. And like I said in the intro, at this point I knew I wasn't going to make it to the landing. In this split moment, I knew I would land on the wrong side of the landing, with that losing all my speed, resulting in an OTB. Not knowing how I would hit the ground, but I feared this might be a broken wrist or collarbone. I did whatever I still could control, and braced myself as best for the impact as possible, hoping for the best.
Iets harder.
Sorry for the anticlimax. I'm as surprised as you that I rode away from this one. Although it did result in an injury. When I landed, my foot slipped from the pedal and the pedal hit me in the heel. I'm sure I don't have to tell you the downside of those grippy pins on the flat pedals. If so, let me show you the result. You might want to look away from this one. As you can see, a lot of nasty scratches. Luckily, no stitches needed. Again, something that could have been so much worse. Now all I had to suffer was to live in the fear of hitting the wounds again. Remember, 1 week later I was riding the trails of Enduro Paradise Ferme Libert, on a hardtail of course. Oh, by the way, you can safely look again. Now time to answer the important question, what went wrong? I think the simple answer is obvious. I just went too slow, duh. In a way I misjudged the speed when looking at the jump, but on the other hand, I already felt I was going slow before the takeoff, so I think that wasn't the issue. No, the real issue was I took a too short run up. I think in order to clear the road gap, you should also jump the boner lock in the same run. If not, at least start a lot higher and navigate past the boner. The problem is that the run up is very rough, even on the downhill bike you can't put many cranks in. Therefore the speed has to come from gravity, unfortunately the bit before the jump flattens out. One more thing I misjudged is the lip of the jump. It's a flat lip, as where my speed calculation assumed there was a radius in the lip to pump for that last bit of speed and pop needed. And let's not forget to include a bit of overconfidence. Yes, I still believe I'm more than capable to clear this gap, however, it sure is a jump where everything has to go right. There's just no room for error whatsoever. I still don't know how much it was skill and how much it was luck that the outcome wasn't any worse. Probably 90% luck and 10% the bike. Anyway, I was even so lucky that I could continue riding after a short break. Only the pain in my heel has costed me too much energy, so I couldn't really focus anymore. So after a few runs, I decided to call it a day anyway. After that day, I expected the bike park season to be over, so I put my downhiller in the winter state, basically just removing the sealant from the tires, but the weather in November was so good that we planned one more bike park day. I was too lazy to fit the tires again for just one day, so I opted to take the hardtail to Ferme Libert. I'm sure by now you know I started with some easygoing warm-up runs, and man, did I regret my life decisions during these runs. This park is rough. Of course, I knew this, but I thought if I can handle a week of finale, I can also handle a day of bike park. By the way, feel free to hit that subscribe button if you want to see my upcoming finale video. After a couple of runs, it was time to visit the dreaded forest site once again. During the warm-up, I already had adjusted the reach of my front brake to get the bike point where I wanted. If you're wondering why I'm going slow in this steep section, it's because I lost most of the pressure in my brake and was barely working. Something that's quite easy to fix, just bleed the brake, a 5-minute job, if only I had the gear for it, which of course I left at home. So I had to live with a front brake that got worse and worse every run.
Ja. Alleen ik heb met mijn voorrem een beetje weinig druk op de een of andere manier. Ik zit een beetje meer te de stand.
At this point I did the smart thing. No, I didn't call it a day, I just did the jump line for the rest of the day. On this line you only have a few spots where you need to brake, and those are pretty long enough to handle the braking with just a back brake. My challenge for the rest of the day was to clear as many jumps as I could. Even though I've cleared them in the past on the downhiller, on the hardtail it's different. Yes, on the hardtail it's so much easier to pop, and therefore it should be easier to clear the jumps, right? Well, even though I dare to say that I'm very used to the hardtail by now, I still find it scarier to commit on the Scout. While I show some of these runs, let me conclude the video. Although there isn't that much to conclude. Sometimes days just don't go as planned. It might all come down to being lucky or unlucky. So, for 2025 I have no real plans. I love to get back here and finally book some progression, but that's something I'll judge in a moment. If I feel like I can do a feature, I might go for it, and if not, I don't. No matter how great it is to do ever bigger jumps, the consequences are getting bigger as well. Even I'm not afraid of crashing, I'm still self-employed, but most of all, I just don't like pain. With those wise words, I've come to the end of the video. As always, I really appreciate you watching my videos. Thank you. I hope to see you back for my next video. For the hardtail lovers here, it will be about one of the most iconic enduro trails ever. But then on a hardtail, of course. For now, houdoe.